Hello friends, welcome hip cats and groovy chicks. Here's a little something I put together to try to show you how to create melodies, write songs, and improvise on a very simple chord progression. So here we go. Now let's pretend that through some kind of magic you could be propelled to my living room and sitting beside me right here. And I would say to you, okay, you play by ear. You want to learn something about music and how to improvise. You don't read music, but you have a good ear for music. So I'll say to you, let's take a simple exercise like this, in which I'm going to play in the key of C. So I'm going to be using just the white notes for now to start with. We'll add the other notes later, but just these notes. And I'm going to give you something that you can play and create music with, which is basically 3 chords and then maybe a 4th chord, but basically 3 chords. Now, you probably heard people sit down at the piano and do this kind of thing. They'll play a chord and then they'll go like something like, you know, what is that? Or they might go like this. Now, so it's not too good sounding, really. Why is that? Well, because it's random. It's not really within the aspect of what I want to show you, which is a good chord progression. In other words, you have to start underneath a good melody. You need a good chord progression. You just can't create a good... This is a good melody. Let's do this. Supposing I just said I'm going to play this one chord. You know, so that's okay. So it sounds like nonsense, and it is. What you need is you have to have some kind of chord progression, and it could be as simple as just a 1 chord, or the tonic chord we call it, and it's related 5. So let's just take C and look at its 5. What is the 5 chord of C? Let's just take triads now. We'll go up 5 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a G chord. G is 5 of C. Now, what happens is it creates a relationship called the tonic and the dominant. So the tonic is the 1 chord, and the dominant is the 5 chord. So now, if we translate it into 7th chords, we're going to do this. We're only white notes now. 1, 2, 1, 3, 5. What's it have to be? It has to be that note, right? It can't be that. That's just repeating. It can't be that. That's a 6. It has to be a 7, right? Now, if we go up the scale, 1 note at a time, what happens when we get to G, or the 5 chord? It's dominant 7th. Now, how do we know that? Well, because it has a major 3rd and it has a minor 7th. It's the only chord that is dominant 7th. All dominant 7ths have a major 3rd and a minor 7th. So if I took C, it would have to have a major 3rd. That's a major 7th. It would have to be a minor 7th. You see, so that's, you need to, you know, be sure you know your intervals. You know, in other words, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, major 7th. You know, intervals, you have to start with that. So I'm you know, anticipating that you, or surmising that you already know your intervals. So now let's take, what is the most important relationship? It's the tonic and its dominant. We can create hundreds of melodies, and people as complex, composers as complex as Beethoven used the tonic and the dominant in a variety of ways, you know. So I'm going to use it in this way. I'm going to show you a simple melody that uses just the dominant and the tonic, like this. We're going to start with the tonic. Dominant. Tonic. dominant. You know, there's hundreds of melodies that are just based on those two chords. So that's our starting point. Now what we're going to do in jazz is we're going to put a dominant in front of the existing dominant, which I'm going to call the primary dominant. The primary dominant is what I call the G7 here. It's going to go to the 1 chord, which is the C major 7. In jazz we're going to use 7th chord. So 1 is going to be a major 7th. The 5 chord is going to be a dominant 7th. Now I can put another dominant taking us, in other words, we want a journey here. We want to go from one place to the next. So what we have to figure out, what precedes where we are, what happened before where we are that is going to take us there. So it's going to be the dominant of the G7. Now what would that be? Well, it would be its 5 chord as well. So it's a D. So now we can put a D dominant 7th in, and that precedes the G7, which precedes the C chord, which is a resolution. Now when we take the D7, we see we have a note in there that doesn't belong. So let's change it and make it a note that belongs, and we're going to make it a D minor 7. So now this is the most important progression, chord progression in jazz and most music, is the 2-5-1. And particularly in jazz because it's used all the time. And it's the most important primary chord progression in jazz. And that is the 2 and the 5 and the 1. So we can create melodies just from that progression. That's what I'm going to show you. So now you're with me and I'm showing you the 2-5-1. Now if you're doing it within a key or tonal center, you can see that I can only use the notes that are in that scale. So I can't go here, I can't go like there. I have to go here because I can only use white notes. So the 2 chord is going to be the second step up. So what is it? I'm going to move every note 1 note at a time. That's going to move up 1 note, this is going to move 1 note. So there's the 2 chord right there. That's the 2, which is a D, defined as a D minor 7th. Now how do I get that? It's based on the D scale. See, you have to know all your scales or you're not going to understand this. So D scale has 2 sharps. So if I lower if I make that lower there, it's becoming a major 3rd to a minor 3rd. And if I lower this, the major 7th to there, it's going to be a minor 7th. So in the 2 chord I have a minor 3rd and a minor 7th. That's its definition. Doesn't matter what key you're in. And then the 5 chord up to the 5, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is, if I define it according to the G scale has 1 sharp. So now I've lowered this major 7 to be a minor 7th, and I also have a major 3rd. So a 5 chord has a major 3rd and a minor 7th. Are you with me? So a 2 chord has a minor 3rd and a minor 7th. A 5 chord has a major 3rd and a minor 7th. And then the 1 chord, of course, has the major 3rd, 5th, and major 7th. So there you have the most important progression in perhaps jazz and also all of music, is the 2-5-1. Now, 2-5-1. And I'm going to show you how that works and how you can begin to create your own music using that progression. You have to have a foundation to a melody. Without it, it will never work, you know. Now that we know that we can create an underlying harmonic support to a melody, we have the 2 and we have the 5 and we have the 1. Now we can begin to play melodies using the white notes only. Like now, let me show you what isn't a good melody, and so we compare what is a good one with one that isn't so good. Supposing we're going to play like the 2 chord like that for 1 measure, like 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. We play the 5 chord for 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we play the 1 chord for 4 beats and then another 4. So we would have an even number, which would be 4. We don't want to just play 3 measures. We want to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3. So we can do that to make the 4th measure different than the 3rd. So we can put it into a 6. And I'll show you something we can do beyond that later on. But let's just take it very simply this way now. Now, do you really want to skip all the way up here and then go down to there? No, you don't want to do that. So what you want to do is play an inversion of this chord. So you can either go up or you can go down. So in this case, we're going to go down because it's down. We want to go down here. So we're going to take that note and put it on the bottom and move this voicing, as we say. Voicing is just a definition of how you are putting the notes in a chord, in what order they are. So this is 1, 3, 5, 7. Now we're going to go take this note and put it down there. Now what we have is 7, 1, 3, 5. If we take it down one more, then we have 5, 7, 1, 3. So that is right in link with the 2 chord. You see, it links up with it this way, in which we just move that note down a half step, we move this note down a whole step. So this is the most important 2-5-1 voicing you're going to learn, is the root position on the D minor chord, D minor 7 chord, and the inverted, which is actually the second inversion of the G7, there. And then we can move that down to the 1 chord in root position. So you see how the economy of motion works. It works like this. This moves down a half step, this moves down a whole step to get to the G7 chord. And then now, so we move these 2 upper notes down. Now we move the 2 lower notes down. This one moves a half step. It's symmetrical. You see, this moves down a half, this moves down a whole. Now to get to resolve it, we move down on the 2 bottom notes a half and a whole. It's perfect the way it works. See, D minor 7, G7 inverted, C major 7 in root position. And then for the 4th bar, we'll just move this 7th down to the 6th. So there you have the chord progression in the left hand. D minor 7, G7 inverted in its second inversion. How do we know it's the second inversion? Well, there's the root position. First inversion would be taking the bottom note, putting it on the top. There's first inversion, now taking the bottom note, putting it on the top. That's second inversion. So there's your second inversion, G7, and then root position, C major 7, and then C6. So there you have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Now you can just work with this progression and create melodies that are going to make sense. They're not just meandering around in nowhere land. They're going to make sense, and you're going to have fun with this, I guarantee. So now we have something that is a foundation of a house. In other words, your walls, your windows, and everything in your house can't function without a foundation below it. They've got to put that cement down there. They've got to dig a hole. Everything else that goes into creating a house or anything else you do in life, you have to have a foundation. So now we have something that is substantial. Not only is it substantial in terms of how you're going to hear it in your ears, but it's substantial in terms of it being an intellectual process. In other words, it relates to your intellect. In other words, it's a 2-5-1. It's a mathematical truth. 2-5-1. Now, you might say, well, why does it have to start with the 2? Well, only because that's the most important progression in music and in jazz in general is the 2-5-1. But it could start on the 1 chord and go to the 6 and then have the 2-5 after that. You see, you have to understand these simple progressions. In other words, 2-5-1, but also there's a progression which is just 1 and then the 2-5 after it. So you could have, a melody that's built on the 1 chord, and then it goes to the 2-5 and resolves back to the 1. Or it could go to from the 1 chord to the 6 chord, and then the 2, 5, 1. But eventually you're going to get to that 2, 5, 1, and it's going to be the most important thing. So now, within that, now you are working with all the white notes. You know, say let's just say we play the 2 chord in its root position there. 1, 1, 3, 5, 7, and then we play the scale starting on the 2. Like we have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we go to this, the 5 chord, inverted, and then we start with its tonic note. And then we go to the 1, we play the scale built on the 1 chord. And then there. So now we have a working formula for creating melodies and improvising on a 2, 5, 1 progression. And the reason we do it in four measures is because that's an even number that works. If we did it in 3, it would be lopsided. You know, we want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. So it just works out logically that our chord progressions work in patterns of 2s, 4s, 6, 8s, and so on. 16ths, 32. They all come out even. Now, you know, many people broke the rule on that one. Let's just say we're going to do the 2, 5, 1 like that, and we're going to create melodies. Now, how do we create a good melody built on that progression? Well, we have to have what are called target tones and passing tones, or you could call them approach tones. In other words, certain notes that fit in the chord by the notes that are in the chord, which strengthen the chord, and then certain notes which pass through it. So like, let's just take the D minor 7. So that's obviously a chord tone, right? So the next one now is a passing tone, because it isn't in the chord, it's the 9th actually. But now we have the 3rd, which is a target tone, it's in the chord. Now we have a passing tone, which is the 4th. Then we have the 5th, which is a target tone. Then we have the 6th, which is a passing tone. So and then we have the 7th, which is a chord tone. So you can see those passing tones don't really, like, they create interesting sounds, but they don't necessarily create good melodies if we use them on strong beats. So the important thing is to think about the strong beats. Where are they? Well, they're on the 1, beat 1, and they're on beat 3. So now that you have the right progression, chord progression underneath of the foundation of a song, now we can create melodies using those chords. In other words, their target tones and their passing tones. So if we do it in C, it'd be this. Target tone, passing tones, target tone, target tone, passing tones, the target tone. Now you'll hear this, and your ears will tell you it sounds good. Like, I'm going to show you a more complex passage in which I'm going to use these and use chromatic notes, but you're going to see how the target tone works. Target, 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 passing, target, target. See, that's so important that you have the target tones on the strong beats. Now the next step to this exercise, in which you're playing mostly on just the white notes, now would be to add another chord. Here we have D minor 7, G7, C major 7, C6. Now we would add a chord that would set up the 2 chord. In other words, this is the 2 chord, D minor 7, G7, 5 chord to the 1 chord. Now how do we set up the 2 chord? With this. the 5 of the 2 chord. In other words, every chord can be preceded by its related 5. So that would be an A7. Now, why is that an A7? Well, it's in first inversion. Now, in addition to the A7, or alternate to the A7, it would be to do a C sharp diminished. So this is an A7 with a 3rd in the bass, and this is a C sharp diminished, which can also take us to D minor. See, it wants to go there. You see how it's that's gonna move down to there, and this is gonna move, this note's gonna move into there, and this note's gonna move into there. You see, so there's your D minor, see? And that diminished chord now adds black notes. You're not gonna have white notes on that chord entirely. You're gonna have some black notes. So now you have this, right? The C sharp in there. Now the question becomes, you're going to do that note, probably you're going to do that note. And that one there, you're going to use that one. So you're going to use those 2 black notes in addition to the white notes. This makes it a lot more fun and more interesting, right? I'll use that note, and now I've got a black note in there. Now watch this. There's that black note. Now, Bob, another black note. There's that black note. I want to make one more quick point, and that is good melodies have a combination of vertical, horizontal, ascending, and descending movement. So vertical would be like arpeggios, like that. That'd be vertical, and then horizontal would be like scales or stepwise. So now you can have it ascending, or you can have it descending. Now, usually what you do is combine these 4 types of movement into lines, specific lines. Like here's an example: ascending, vertical, descending, horizontal. Like that, to a target tone. So these are all target tones here. Now you have some passing tones here. So you could have it in the reverse motion, like that, you see. So mixing it up like that with vertical movement, horizontal movement, and then stepwise and arpeggiated, these create good melodies. So now I want to play it with the introduction of some black notes, a couple of black notes on the diminished chord approaching the 2 chord. So here's the 2, 5, 1, and there's the diminished approach. Signing off from the Jazz Ranch. I hope you enjoyed this. Please write to me. I love to hear from you, and I always will try to respond to your comments. So until next time, we'll say, in the words of my great friend Hermie Dressel, swing loose. And we'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.